Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. This is Sipping Tea with Nat and Z. I'm Nat.
And I'm Z.
What's up? What's up? How
Not,
goes it?
same old, same old. Another week,
Mm-hmm.
another day at work, another week at work. Good Lord, gotta find me another job.
Just like that little TikTok.
Yeah, shit. Let me go in here and be fake for another 8 hours.
So I can get my damn check and keep it moving.
No, I had actually a pretty good week.
Mm-hmm.
We did some things as a family this week. So I was
Mm-hmm.
off for a few. I actually was off until technically uh Tuesday, but Wednesday I had to be online,
Mm-hmm.
quote,
Understood.
air quotes.
You was working. You were working. You were teleworking in the time
hmm
that you had left over from your departure
Yeah,
of
no, but
festivities.
I did tell my boss that I was traveling, so I was gonna have limited access to email.
Oh, so then you're covered.
So I was covered. And then I met up with some people that I was well were previous. Well, our one is a coworker now, and one left. So I met up with
Mm-hmm.
them for lunch, and
Hmm.
it was just awesome to just get out and shoot shit
Nice.
for a few hours.
Understood.
So I had a pretty good week, I would say. What about you?
Well, it was a bit,
Mm,
tumultuous. A lot of
that's
things
right.
going
That's right.
on um, in our family, and just taking it day by day and trying to be supportive, and kind of makes you circle back to one of our other shows that we talked about when you're dealing with grief and loss and all
Yeah.
those things that come with it, and
Yeah.
trying to be supportive for everyone and everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Because we had two funerals to go to yesterday. So um, it's kind of been a lot,
Mhm.
unfortunately. So, okay. So it's been exciting. It's been entertaining seeing family together. Being down south is a
Mhm.
whole other element.
Yes, the
And
South
so
is.
entertaining. It is
The
so
South is different. The
entertaining.
South is different.
It is so, oh my goodness. But it's nice to see everybody together. We were taking pictures. I met a whole bunch of new nieces and nephews.
Mhm.
Like a whole bunch. Like one
Mhm.
person introduced me. My brother-in-law was like, "How, this your auntie, this your auntie." And I moved out the way cuz I didn't realize he was talking about me because there was a whole train of children behind him. And he's like, "This your auntie, this your auntie, this." I was like, "Oh, you talk okay, got it." I forgot. And they're like, "Oh, that's Fluffy's wife." Fluffy is the nickname that my husband has, and that's what everybody down here calls him.
mhm.
Along with the other nicknames everybody got, Junebug this and I, PP and the nicknames alone, it has been very entertaining. Even though we're in our time of grief, but my mother-in-law passed, and she looks really good, and I think the family this might be a nice time for folks to reconnect.
Mhm.
So it's good and bad, but usually weddings and funerals, unfortunately, are the only times that folks kind of have that realization.
Yeah.
Um,
I would say
so
that unfortunately with funerals, the funerals tend to be, especially with black people, they tend
yeah,
to have a lot of grief and sorrow, but they also tend to have a lot of joy.
yes,
And I think sometimes that's off-putting to some people, that here someone is has passed away
hmm,
and there are people over here kikiing it up. But that's what we do as black people,
yes,
right?
that is such a good
We
point.
we have been through so much
Hmm.
in our history that we have learned to find some joy even
Hmm.
in the most,
Darkest and saddest of
yes,
times.
times. And that
Hmm.
should actually be celebrated, because in a lot of other cultures,
Celebrate that.
they don't mourn the way that Americans
Mm-mm.
mourn when it
No.
comes to death, right? It's a party, it's
Hmm.
a celebration, because
Of them.
especially if the person has lived a long good life.
Yes, exactly.
um I would say like when my grandma passed away, it was very somber for us just because
Mhm.
we've experienced so much loss.
Right.
But there were moments where we were just laughing and
Mhm.
enjoying each other because
Yes.
of the fact that my grandmother lived a full life. I mean, she
Life.
died at 88, but her
Oh, yes.
life was so rich with
Mhm.
experiences that I don't think she could have done any more.
Right.
I mean,
They've
this
come
woman was
and they
in
made their impact.
She did. I mean, this woman was still doing, don't get it twisted. Grace was still doing Taebo and water
Oh, I
aerobics
know.
well into her 80s. And if dementia didn't take her down, Grace would have been here being a bad bitch with me and we would have
Yes.
been all over, okay?
No doubt.
Don't get it
No
twisted because
doubt.
Grace wasn't going to be slowed down,
Right.
okay?
Right. That is
Best
so true. And I
believe.
think it when you sit down, you think about all that they've brought to the table, all the people they've impacted, and realizing to celebrate that
Mhm.
in the family sense is so important. It also helps with, and the topic of our show today is father child dynamics, and talking about and being here with the family and seeing folks reconnect and connect with their children. And then you saw some folks that may have had some old hurts with their
Mm.
respective
Mm.
with their respective parents and fathers and
Mhm.
stuff that were
Mhm.
there, and the funeral on in a good way was able to kind of break that down for a little bit,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
can reconnect, you know what I mean? So it kind of
I get that.
flows with, you're seeing some strained relationships, but now everyone is like, we got to put that to the side, let's squash it, and let's try to do better and move forward,
Right.
you
Or
know
in my case, it's my grandma. The funeral gave me the opportunity to really put two middle fingers up to my uncle and say, I'm done. I
and
never
there's
had to
that.
sit here again in my entire life. And I am good with that.
and and sometimes that's
Normalize,
where you need it to do, you need it
yes.
to cut.
Normalize cutting out toxic ass family members.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Normalize that shit.
Just
Because
because they
you don't have
blood
to.
does not mean
Speak.
just because they are blood. Pastor was talking about that yesterday. He said we all family, but just because you blood doesn't mean y'all have to be kikiing it up all. You have to make your boundaries.
Yes,
Make your
yes,
boundaries. Because some
yes.
people, take advantage of you, and those are the ones that be your family. And the folks
Yep.
that help you up are your friends.
Take
You
your time,
know,
Pastor.
I'm just saying, we can pass the plate later. Okay, we can pass the plate later. So it's like the weekend was like a microcosm of life and seeing how folks
mm,
interact and
mm.
reconnect. But the comedy, y'all, whew,
I'm pretty sure it was top
the
notch.
top
It always
notch,
is, especially
top
with Southern families. It always is. Trust and believe.
top notch. Oh my goodness. So yeah, today we're gonna relax and then just enjoy being around folks and nieces and nephews, and I think it's good and seeing all the connections. So we're
Okay.
happy. We're happy to see where that's going.
Well,
So
then let's get you up out of here as quickly as possible. So let us know what the
hmm
tea of the day is. You know, y'all been listening long enough. If you're new, we do this all the time. We just want y'all to know we're not tea experts. You
hmm
know, some medications will mix poorly with
with
certain teas. So you want to talk to your doctor before you start incorporating teas into your daily regimen.
yes, please.
We're not affiliated with any of these companies, nor are these endorsements. So what we drinking on?
So we're going with Twining's Earl Grey loose tea today.
Let me tell you, that is Earl Grey is such a staple.
Yes,
It has such a
it's
great
so aromatic.
it has such a good scent. I
Yes.
don't know what it is about Earl Grey, but I of all the black teas,
Mm-hmm.
that is my fave.
Hands down,
My fave,
hands
hands down.
down. My parents, every time if they've been overseas or my sister goes to London or aunt is in England, that's one thing that they always will send back over because it is
Mhm.
one of my favorite teas, black teas,
Yeah.
and it's that bergamot, that flavor that kind of just
Yes, that's exactly
ratchets
what it
it
is.
up,
Mhm.
and just adds to that flavor, and it's light. One way you can have it is 1 teaspoon of loose leaf tea in a strainer cup, like 6 to 8 ounces. And if you're making it in a teapot, and an infuser is not used, you can use it, brew it through a strainer for like 2 to 4 minutes for your taste. But did you know there are some really great benefits of Earl Grey outside of it just smelling amazing and tasting great? It's good for your teeth. It aids in digestion. It helps fight anxiety and depression. And it's good for energy. It's not as a high kick as coffee, but it definitely gives you a little boost through,
Right.
and but it won't keep you up all night. It helps prevent cancer because of its antioxidants and free radicals and stuff. Unsurprisingly, because like most teas, if you're drinking water, it helps with weight loss. But specifically, it's due to its citrus extract why it helps with weight loss.
Mm.
Yeah, who knew, right? Prevention of heart
Let me
disease.
get on my damn Earl Grey
Earl
then.
Grey tip, exactly. Because if that's like helping me with the diuretic thing, I'm here for it. It's good for heart prevention, heart disease prevention. If you were have 3 cups a day,
Mm-hmm.
then it's helpful for stress relief, which we all know it relaxes and soothes you just instantly as
Yes,
soon as you
yes,
smell
it
it. It
does.
just
Ooh, I'm gonna tell you, on a rainy day with a cup of Earl
ooh,
Grey,
that is lovely,
bars. I just had
love,
bars. Did you
lovely.
hear what I
Yes,
said?
go
On a
say it
rainy day with
again.
a
Say
cup
it
of Earl
again.
Grey.
Wicka wicka wicka. I hope y'all caught those bars she dropped, y'all. I hope you caught them. Hope you caught them. It's also good for cold relief, specifically targeted around the bergamot, and it helps with your immune system. And it's considered a natural cold remedy. And last but not least, it keeps you hydrated.
Mm.
And right, no, not because you take it with water, but like how most other teas or coffees have dehydrating properties, this tea for some is able to keep you hydrated and maintains the body's fluid balance because of its high potassium content.
Let me find out. Okay, Earl
Right?
Grey.
Come
You
in,
ain't a
come
basic
through. Nope,
bitch.
ain't no basic bitch tea here, ma'am. So that is the
Uh,
tea for today. I hope y'all enjoy. I did not know there were so many great things about Earl
I didn't
Grey.
either. I didn't know all of that. Now
Yes.
that like some of the stuff I knew, but
Mm-hmm.
you dropped some nuggets. You
Yeah.
did drop some nuggets that I wasn't aware of.
So enjoy, y'all. Go
Yes,
on and get
get
you
you some Earl
some.
Grey.
Get your weight loss, relax, and all that good stuff. Stress relief from this tea.
Yes,
Enjoy. So what's been going on with the hot tea though?
the hot tea is more like iced tea because it's a little old. A little iced tea instead of hot tea today, but we're just gonna make it do what it do.
Make it work. Make it work.
Um. So first off is Naomi Osaka.
Mhm.
She pulled out, I think it was a French Open,
Yeah.
due to mental health reasons.
Right. Mhm.
And there has been this big debate online. And actually, if you look at the debate, it is a generational breakdown.
Ah.
And it's like the Gen Zs, and I know I sound like a boomer because I'm always talking about generations, but
Mm.
it's so prevalent now, the differences between each of the generations, because
Yes.
everybody's still in the workforce, right? So you still have boomers in the workforce, Gen X, you have
Mhm.
millennials, and now Gen Z is in the workforce. So it's very obvious the differences between how we all are
Right.
dealing and coping with certain things. I feel like Gen X is the forgotten generation because it's always boomers and millennials going at it, and now it's millennials
Mhm.
and
And
Gen
everybody
Z's
else.
going at it. And Gen X is just like,
Hello.
I'm over here minding my business, drinking water and staying hydrated. Y'all,
That
y'all
part.
have at it.
Exactly.
But someone on Facebook posted, like, is it they've been taught to just tough it out. So they're trying to figure out the thought process behind why Naomi decided to just take a beat. And
Mhm.
I made a comment that said that, I think speaks to us, but then also speaks to this new generation.
Mhm.
Gen X has been taught to just we just got to figure it out, right? We're the
Mhm.
latchkey kids. We've
Yes.
dealt with a lot of us were coming of age or to our adulthood when 9/11 hit.
Mhm.
Like,
Yes.
I think microwave foods really took off. This like fast
Mm.
food industry really developed for Gen X because
Right.
both parents were working.
Working.
So you need to put something in the microwave real quick. You need quick instant meals. We're just used to
Yeah.
surviving, right?
That is so true.
But in
Making it
doing
work.
that, yes, we struggle in silence. We don't ask for help. We
Mm.
tend to
Figure it
just
out.
muddle through.
Yeah.
And we are birthing, a lot of us have birthed the millennials and the Gen Z. So the fact that we're complaining about them cracks me up because these are your children. These are our
Ex-
children. So
exactly.
you need to figure out why you raise these people this way.
Like that.
Right. But I think Gen Z has looked at the generations past and say there has to be a better way.
Mhm.
I am not going to struggle mentally if I don't have to. And yeah, I do feel like there are some, if you're working, there are obligations that you have to fulfill.
Agreed.
But your
And that's a
mental
big
health,
but.
yes, but your mental health
Should be
is by
paramount.
far the most important thing that you
Mhm.
have to worry about. A lot of us, older generations, are miserable at work. We
Yes.
go to
That's
work.
it's like that TikTok.
Yes, we hate our coworkers, we hate our boss, we hate our responsibilities, our jobs, our duties, but we muddle through. And this new generation is like, why do I have to do that?
Right. They're
If
like, I'm
if
not gonna do that. Why would I be miserable?
right,
I don't understand what am I suffering for?
exactly, for
What am
money,
right.
I'm not going to be able to afford anything anyway.
Right, because and then
So,
none of the jobs are like pension based. Like back in
no,
the day, people don't
no,
stay in jobs that long. There's no
no,
loyalty because there's no
no,
kickback. They're like,
no.
what is my return on my investment?
Exactly. And so, I applaud her because I think the thing that people were missing was the way that the way that the questions were set up, the way
Hmm.
that they interviewed her, the things that they asked her were triggers for her. So she wasn't withdrawing just because my mental health
Right,
is falling apart. It was like, these things are triggers for me. I know these are triggers for me, and I need to take a step back to be the best version of me I can be.
right.
And you can see the difference because Serena's, I would say, is probably the cusp of Gen X
Hmm.
into millennium. And
Hmm.
she was just like, I got tough skin. Like,
Right.
some people don't.
And you
And
got to think about all the stuff she had to go through and how her dad trained both of them and
right,
where they were coming from in Compton that it was necessity for them to do that and be able to and because they were breaking in the barriers into this
right,
field.
right.
So they had to deal with a whole lot more
More.
coming in.
And I will also say, from a aesthetic point of view,
Mhm.
Serena has had to deal with a lot more than Naomi has.
Yes.
So
That
Serena has
part.
had to
Yes.
figure it out
Yes.
mentally in order to be at her best,
Best.
right?
Exactly.
And, again, we like to police Black women and how they feel.
Mm.
And that's a whole conversation that we should have because we
Mm.
don't get to just feel
B.
how we want to feel and just be, right? So I
No.
do see that there is, excuse me, there's something to be said for what Serena is saying, that,
Mhm.
yeah, as a Black woman, you got to have tough skin sometimes and you just got to suck it up. But on the
Yeah.
other end of the spectrum, but not to the detriment of your own mental well-being.
Exactly. Exactly.
Right? Like, not to the point where you are about to literally lose your shit.
And then what's gonna happen? Oh, they're gonna say, "Oh, that poor girl."
Exactly. Exactly. Because you're always going to be wrong. Always.
Damned if you do,
Always.
damned if
You're
you
damned
don't.
if you do, you're damned if you don't.
And I understand the contract. You don't want to breach a contract. I get that
Mm-hmm.
from the professional side of what is expected. But let's say she does do it, and then she kirks out, and something happens. She has a breakdown because she can't handle it. You know what? She can't fulfill her obligations anyway. At that
Right.
point,
Right.
so give her that time to figure that out. But I am happy that it came to the forefront though, because I know a lot of athletes how they train. It's it's a
Mm-hmm.
mental. There's a lot of mental fortitude that has to go into them
A
being
lot.
where they are and the sacrifices that they make,
Right.
and accounting for or bringing to the forefront that sometimes it's a struggle.
Right.
And that's okay that it's a struggle, but just
Excuse
figure out
me.
how to work through it. But
Right.
don't persecute on that. You can't. I don't see why it can't be one or the other.
But you know, what's his
Why it
name?
has to be one or the other, rather.
Right. I think it was Nadal.
Yes.
Maybe it's Nadal. He
Mhm.
said he was taking off because he needed to give his body rest, and everybody was like, "Oh, that's
Mhm.
understandable." So we can understand that your body needs rest, but when we say our mind needs
Mine needs
rest, it's like,
rest.
"Oh, you're weak. You don't.
Mhm.
You can't handle pressure, and that just shows your character." No, some people.
Yeah.
Gen Z has found the cheat codes in life.
All right, and
And
make it
we just
through.
haven't. That's it. They just know the cheat codes.
And they're willing to sacrifice for
And
the betterment
hey,
of themselves.
and that's you know, more
Yeah.
kudos to them.
Yeah.
So I wish her well. I hope she takes all the time she needs to get back mentally sound and centered.
Mhm.
And y'all need to get that child a break. Bonnet gate. So there's been this big debate, right? Because Monique came on IG to talk about how she was at the airport going to a show, and she was in Atlanta, which not surprised, and she
Mhm.
saw a sea of black women in scarves and bonnets. And she was asking in pajamas, and she was asking these women to take a little bit more pride, and these are her words, okay, in the way that they present
Present
themselves
themselves.
to the world.
Mhm.
And so the whole universe of Twitter and IG just went out. Again,
Yes.
broken down by generation. The younger generation was like, I'm gonna do what I want to do. If I want to wear a bonnet, I'm gonna wear a bonnet. You can't tell me, stop policing us, da 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 da. Where the older generation was either like, that's tacky, that's ghetto, and you shouldn't be doing that. Or I'm not gonna do that, but if you want to do that, cool.
Right. That's your
Do
business.
you?
I'm gonna
That's
be
your
over
business.
here.
So I sat and I thought about it, right? And I said, how
Mhm.
do I really feel about this? I'm definitely team, that ain't gonna be me, but do you?
Yes.
I'm not coming out the house
Looking
in a
like,
bonnet with a. I'm just not. Like
yeah,
now, if I had to run to the bank and I had to wake up, it was an emergency. If there's something like that, yes, okay, understandable.
but not
But
casually strolling.
no, and especially not when there are alternatives,
There are.
attractive alternatives to keeping your hair nice and tight and up when you're traveling. There just are. However, if that's what you choose to do,
Right.
do you, baby?
Yeah.
It just ain't for me.
Do you, baby, ain't for me.
No.
But
And
it
I
ain't
think
for me.
it speaks to, again, I was raised by like my mom, of course, but my grandparents who are old school, right?
Yep.
And my grandma was like they were very, and a lot of people can attest to this. I'm pretty sure the same is in a lot of Caribbean cultures. You're not
Yeah.
going outside looking a hot mess because that's a direct
Right.
reflection of me.
On me.
So we
Yes.
were never allowed to go out. We couldn't go outside, and if I even went on the porch in my pajama pants, my grandparents would have a fit. It was like, you not gonna go out looking a hot mess. You are a
Right.
direct representative of me, and I'm not going to have you going out there embarrassing me.
And
That's
I think
just
about it though, this also stems from Jim Crow. This stems from slavery because certain things where we were not allowed, we were forced to
cover
look us
ourselves.
cover ourselves,
Mm-hmm.
look a certain way, looking just dirty and teggereg, as my mother
Mm-hmm.
would say, because the folks were in the field. And being able to, and I would even venture to say, when you were in the house, if you were a house slave,
Mm-hmm.
you were presented differently because you were in front of people. But if you
Mm-hmm.
were outside in the field, you were looking in rags. So the moment that you didn't have to be enslaved, you were excited to get dressed. Look at
Right.
Django. The first thing he did was find that suit.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was, ostentatious, but it was a suit. And like when he's going through the fields, they're like, is a black person on a horse? And he was all dressed up.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a sense of pride. And you
Mm-hmm.
pass that on because how we as Black people have been seen in this country, how they
That part.
portray us
That
when you
part.
have the minstrel shows,
Mhm.
all those things that you just look like you're just, simpering, following behind folks, just looking any old type of way, the way whites have portrayed blacks in this country wanted to make sure that when they left the house, they were countering that stereotype
Right.
and they were countering what they thought we should look like.
Right.
And so I think generation wise, that's where that comes from. That comes from a very rational place. And they're like, look, we did all this stuff to get in a respectable, be looked at as respectable. Folks look at you now with the pants behind your under your ass and all that stuff, everything. And there's a reason why it upsets folks, because what they had to go through to get to
Exactly.
where, I
To
mean, you
get
look
to
at like
where
where they are now. And like, if you look at Tulsa, when they were doing Tulsa things last week or a
mhm.
couple weeks ago, everyone on the street had on a suit. Everyone was dressed to the nines. People had on their hats, their gloves. And I understand that was at that time, but you didn't see anyone they were proud to be able to have the funds to present themselves as such.
Yep.
So now and in that sense, I'm understanding where the generation is coming from, of they already expect us to look like hood rats.
Yep.
And
So
now you confirming it. So that's how some people may view it.
yeah, and again, more power to you.
Won't
If
be
you want
me.
to do it, I'm not going.
Mm,
Just more power to you. It's just not for me.
right.
And then last is versus. So the last versus battle was Swiss um and Timberland, which was, if you came up with that music, it was epic. I think the
Mm-hmm.
crowd was too young, and
To
so it
appreciate.
just didn't. They didn't appreciate what they were witnessing. Like,
Mm,
these people have Swiss Beats and Timberland, and I would say Timberland is especially have
he's been in the
created
game.
music that is timeless. That you put it on now, and people gonna be in the club like
Of
going
course.
off. Okay, they've done music with
Mm,
all of your faves. So, the crowd was whack, but they put on a good show.
good.
And they just released their two new lineups, Eve and Trina, which I'm looking forward to. The kids
Mm-hmm.
on the internet like, oh, that don't seem, no. If you don't understand or can't appreciate this Eve and Trina battle, you too young. Just go to bed and have a snack and go to bed, okay? Get a juice box,
Not
get
a
a cheese,
yes, get
a
a
juice
juice
box, a
box.
cheesesteak, and take
Yes.
your ass to bed. So
Not lunchable.
this is going to be epic. And I think people are like, well, Trina didn't have a whole lot of albums. Trina's been featured on
Tons.
many songs that she could pull out. And Eve, come on now, come on.
Yeah,
I'm
come
excited for
through.
this one. So that's June 16th. And the other one, I ain't watching, is Bow Wow and Soldier Boy. I don't give a damn about that shit. I don't like either one of them.
Really?
Don't care. Won't watch.
I didn't even know
Y'all tell
Soldier
me
Boy was
about it.
out now.
Y'all tell me about it. They both, well, Soldier Boy look like a crackhead, but that's a whole nother.
I know he was in trouble for a while because of some stuff he said about the military.
Yes. So
So
let just I ain't nope. I'm
yeah,
done. I'm done. I will not be watching that one. Y'all let me know.
right.
But that's it. So we're gonna go ahead and take a quick break and then jump right into our tea time segment, which is the father-child dynamic.
And we're back. So, like we said before, this episode is on the father-child dynamics in preparation for Father's Day coming up. So, when it comes to parenting, it can sometimes feel like fathers are second best. We hear that all the time, that fathers are like an afterthought around Father's Day. Depictions of dads in pop culture push stereotypes as incompetent, emotionally disconnected, the second parent, the afterthought, the parent that, if you got to watch your kid, the child, usually doing something dangerous with the dad, they don't put him on some little remote control car and took off, and just like be like just not responsible sometimes, and as if they're not as important in their children's lives as their mothers, which we all know is not the case. As a result, fathers unfortunately feel like they have to take a back seat when it comes to being involved in raising their kids. and can face ridicule, which is amazing to me, that they help changing diapers or express interest in taking paternity leave to take care of their children, which is a wonderful thing if you are able to do it. The U.S. hopefully will get on that sooner than later. Other countries already have paternity leave, and in reality, although a mother's love is important and special, having an active father figure plays equally important role in the healthy development of your children.
Hmm.
So, on this show, obviously, we look at Black women's health and all those things that are connected to it. So when we're looking at fathers, we're also connecting Black fathers to what this looks like as they're interacting with their Black women, Black young women and ladies as they're growing into women. And there's this quote by Jelani Cobb, who's a writer and educator, that speaks to be both Black and a father is to be seen by much of the world through a haze of stereotypes and half truths, to be damned by the faint praise of people who expect so little that merely showing up is regarded as a minor miracle. That's
Mm.
huge because unfortunately in the Black community, it's seen as a novelty if someone's like, "Oh, your dad is around," and it should not. It
Mm.
should not be the case,
Mm-hmm.
And we got that from a New York Times article that we'll definitely post some information on. But like I had mentioned before, the father aspect flows into how women see men and see the relationship with men going further. And so, if you want to talk about that,
Sure. So when we talk about father's impact on daughter, right, on their daughters, we talk about how the father actually can create the gold standard for their future romantic
mm-hmm,
relationships. And, there's a lot of truth into this. If the father daughter relationship is very secure and supportive and communicative, um, the daughter is seen to be less likely to get pregnant as a teenager, less
mm-hmm,
likely to become sexually active in her early teens. They usually wait longer to get married and have children. They have relationships with men that are emotionally intimate and fulfilling, and they generally have satisfying, more lasting marriages. Um, what is surprising is not that fathers have such an impact on their daughters' relationships with men, but that they generally have more impact than mothers do. And we do see this, right? You hear when women have daddy issues, it shows up in
mm-hmm,
all of their relationships. And I think that we are so desensitized to
mm-hmm.
seeing people having normal functioning relationships with their parents,
Right.
that when a woman or a man, right, but in this case when a woman who's had a very good solid relationship with her father
Mm-hmm.
has, listen to this, standards and tell you they're not going to take
What?
certain things from you. It's like, who you think you are? I'm a
Mm.
woman who has a great relationship with her father, who taught her not to take bullshit off of anybody,
Right.
right?
That's such a good point you made right there because when someone says they have standards, like,
Mm-hmm.
and then it's like, oh, you think you're too good
Standards.
for anybody. What? It as where do
Standards and boundaries.
how do we come to that part where we're not supposed to have standards and boundaries that, and if we do, we're seen as an anomaly. Like, what's
Right.
wrong with you
Exactly.
that you have boundaries and standards?
Right. Now, again, this is, of course, in every situation you have the norm and then the not so norm. So
Mm-hmm.
you could have situations where somebody has a great relationship with their father and still some of these things won't apply to them. But
True.
generally speaking, this is what can occur when the father is a gold standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um a father's love and acceptance can greatly impact the daughter's future confidence. So
Mm.
loving fathers who praise, support, and give their daughters unconditional love also are giving them the gift of confidence and high
Mm.
self-esteem.
So true.
So if they have these traits early and they have this type of relationship with their father early, they grow
Mm-hmm.
into happy and successful humans, adults.
Mm-hmm.
Supportive fathers, and this is key. Supportive fathers can help improve their daughter's body image. I think
Mm.
mothers and fathers do can have a negative impact on how a daughter views her
Yes.
body, but well fathered daughters are less likely to become clinically depressed or to develop eating disorders, right?
Mm.
And they're also less dissatisfied with their appearance and their body weight. So
Hmm.
there's something to think about. If you're a father and you're listening and you have a daughter, let's speak positivity. Let's make, what do they call it? Body not, what is the tech?
Normalization.
Something like that. These new kids be coming up with all kinds of things.
This is true. This is
Um
true.
but just speak positivity about, the way they look,
Yeah.
because it can have a significant impact. If the first thing you say is,
Yes.
"Girl, you getting chunky.
Mm.
Girl, you getting a little bit too much hair, then that's going to make her
Yeah.
self-conscious about the way she looks, and it's going to make her present herself in a less confident way to the world.
Hmm. And be
Um
more vulnerable.
yes, very much so. Behaviors that could stem from an unhealthy father-daughter relationship. You have an absentee dad.
Hmm.
Okay. Now, the absentee dad can show up in different forms. Maybe they were incarcerated. Maybe they're estranged. They're not a part of your life. Maybe they had passed away early on.
Hmm.
Um, you know, Sometimes signs that you might want to look for, you're clinging and wanting to maybe be with, you're very clingy. So maybe you have a partner and you're clinging on to that partner
Yeah.
all the time and you're always wanting them around. Because which is the next thing, you may have a fear of abandonment because your father is absent. So now you've developed this fear of abandonment. So now you
Hmm.
stay in unhealthy relationships, or you bounce from person to person because you have this fear of not having someone, not having a
Hmm.
man, because your father was absent in your life. And we've seen this. I've seen this
All the time,
a
unfortunately.
lot. You may also be codependent. You may be a pick me.
Mm.
So you try to
That's a
to
good one.
please the men you date, and you may you know, how can I put this? You try to please the men you date, but then you're also like not setting boundaries or letting this person be a habitual line stepper, right?
Mm.
And you set a boundary and they cross it, and then you're like, it's okay, it's okay, you
Hmm.
know, no, it's fine. If you cheat on me, okay, you cheat on me again, it's fine,
Right. Or they might be like, it was it me? This is something I
oh,
did.
it was me, I did it.
Yeah.
We see this a lot. We see people staying in unhealthy situations, and a lot of it can be stemmed from the relationships with their parents, but you can almost always, with daughters, have a direct line to their relationship with their father, right?
Hmm.
You could
Hmm.
have an emotionally unavailable dad, right? And this is where I get back to Gen Z having the cheat code. A lot of men have been raised to be unemotional. You don't cry. You suck
Yes.
it up. You tough it
Hmm.
up. You show no emotions because emotions are a sign of weakness and vulnerability. I
Yes.
never saw my grandfather cry, hardly saw him smile, laugh. My grandfather was about his business, right?
Mm.
And it can kind of come off cold, but then you have to realize how these people, how he probably was raised.
Hmm.
And so you understand, and you give that person grace and a little bit of empathy, because it's not their fault
Right.
technically. And then they didn't have the tools or the support to go maybe and work that shit out in therapy, right?
Right.
Because therapy, when my grandfather was coming up, was, we not going to, no,
No.
we not, no, that's
We're
for
not telling anybody our business.
no.
Yeah. But it's
So
interesting you said that about the emotional thing. My niece came to me yesterday and said, this is the first time, she's 10 years old. And she's like, Aunt Nat, I've never been to a funeral, so I didn't know what to expect. She's very young, very, oh my goodness, she's so bright. And she said, people were crying and stuff, and I didn't even understand. She's like, and even men were crying. And she was just like, I've never seen that. She's
yeah.
like, do men cry? And I said, yes, baby, it's okay to cry.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, King cries, which is her little brother. She's like, but that's usually because he wants something. But I've never just seen men cry because they were
Mm-hmm.
sad. And I said, well, it does happen, and it's allowed, and it's okay. And to normalize it. But it was so interesting that she observed that at 10 years old,
And thought it was
because,
not
yes,
normal.
and thought it was not normal.
And
So
yeah.
it's just very interesting to say based on what you just made a point of.
And that's good that you said that, because she's at 10 and she might be already developing that thought process that
Mm-hmm.
all men are the same, and therefore
Yep.
you don't expect anything different. So then when you do see something different, It's like, whoa, why?
Right.
You're
What's going
crying. I
on?
don't understand that. Like,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
you may also assume, like, if you have an emotionally unavailable dad, that you're unlovable and
Mm.
you're unwanted. So then you keep a distance from you. You build up a wall because you don't want to get hurt.
Yep.
And then you may act like you don't care, but you do. You're just fearful because you've been in a situation with the your father where you've probably tried to express your emotions or show
Mm.
him love and affection and you didn't get it in return. And
Yeah.
so you felt the pain of that early and you say, nope, I know what that feels like. I don't want to go
Mm.
through that again. So then you become emotionally detached and unavailable
Yes.
and unable to have meaningful, deep connections with people.
It starts a cycle.
Yeah. And then this one is sad. If your dad is abusive, mean, or not loving, you
Mm.
might pick someone who is the extreme opposite of your father, or you may pick someone who is
Just
exactly
exactly.
like your father.
Mhm.
And then that can cause you to have issues with trusting and
Mhm.
committing. You if you pick somebody that's the opposite of your father, you may say, I don't want anything like my dad, but then your behavior
Mm.
starts to affect that relationship because you are already expecting the worst.
Mm.
So you
Yeah.
start sabotaging,
Yes.
and
Self-sabotage.
you may start to carry that into that relationship. So it's a good relationship, but you just feel you're just carrying all that extra emotional baggage from having an abusive father, from having a not
Mhm.
loving father, that you now put all of that energy onto this person.
Mhm.
Or you pick somebody who's abusive and then you are now getting abused because in your mind abuse is love
Yep.
because all you've seen is abuse.
Yep.
And if your father is abusing you but still tells you that he loves you, then you're
Yeah.
adding abuse and love.
Yep.
So if
Mhm.
this person is being mean to me, not loving, abusive, then they love me. And if they're not being that way, they don't. So now
Right.
I gotta find an issue with it because you don't love me because you're not doing the things that I believe shows
Mm.
love.
Yep.
You see how that can
Man,
all
alter.
alter your just whole outlook on what a healthy relationship is
Mm.
supposed to be.
It's oh my goodness. And how it's indelible and you can
Yes.
just continue to perpetrate it and go for one relationship and think okay, it's great and then you're trying to cause conflict and not even realizing that you're causing conflict because that's what it's been ingrained
Mm.
in you
Mm-hmm.
to do and you don't recognize that it's not healthy because you have no other example,
Right.
and I think folks also need to try to understand when they're interacting with other people, they don't know what that person went through to get where they are to be in front of you,
Yep.
and what they had to adjust, alter, figure out for themselves, and those things come into play when you have to sit back and think, well, if there are those things that you can look out for that are having a negative impact, what is the flip side of how to have a healthy father-daughter relationship?
Hello. Good morning.
you know and see if you see those things happening, what is the opposite and how do you make that
Mm-hmm.
a successful relationship? And fathers, love your daughters unconditionally. I know sometimes there's a perception that the dads can be overbearing with their daughters and showing up with like a shotgun if you're trying to date somebody, and if something happens, if she dates somebody or she ends up pregnant and then you just cast her out. You would love to have to be loved unconditionally and not in love through your faults. So do that for your daughters. Value her opinion. We live in a misogynistic society and women are considered less than on so many levels. We don't even get paid the same. So if you're going to perpetrate that as a father and not value her opinion, it can cause a whole bunch of ruckus. But if you let her not let her encourage her voice and encourage her
Mm.
opinions, and that you express that you value her opinions and what she has to say is of consequence, you are adding to that child's confidence.
Yes.
And you do have a responsibility to be there. You just are not a sperm donor. Like, if you're gonna have a relationship, you have to understand that it takes more than just showing up every now and again. And this is showing up when she's sad, happy, and not gift giving. Even like looking at it as a love language. What you just can't show up and be a gift giver,
Mm-hmm.
as part of what you think your job is as a father.
You have to show
So,
up mentally, emotionally,
mm,
spiritually, and physically.
all of the above, as much as you can. It's so important. And pick a project to do together so you can build memories. I know that was something that for when I was growing up was very integral for my dad. He had at one point wanted two girls and two boys, and my father's a mechanic. So he was like, well, I guess we're just gonna learn. The girl's gonna learn how to do mechanical stuff, and that's pretty much what we did. We built cars together, engines. A lot of my tinkering I get from my father because we've worked on projects together. We do
Right.
art and stuff like that, and those have lasted with me to this day. And that certain things around the house I don't shy away from trying to fix because those are things that my dad made sure that I knew how to do so that I wouldn't necessarily have to be dependent on anybody, whether it be a man or a woman, but just dependent, period.
Mm-hmm.
You know, don't fix her problems. That's not your job all the time. Sometimes, it can come into that. It's a time and a place, I would say. But be there to understand what her problems are and try to help. But don't be the fixer for everything. She has to figure out some stuff on her own and be able to problem solve. Don't parent by gender just
Mm.
because you're the dad and you only want to hang out with the son. That's a no. That's
Or
yeah.
don't have rules for your son that are different than
Yes.
the rules you have for your daughter. Your son's curfew is 1 a.m., but
Mm,
your daughter's is 11. And
hello.
why? Don't
Why
do
is
that.
that
Don't do that.
equal? Come on, that's where the misogyny starts from that age.
That
So
is where the
I'm
misogyny
telling
starts.
you, and then now your son sees that and starts perpetrating it for other women.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing. Not a good look. You are your daughter's prime role model for men. Remember that. What she sees, what she comes in contact, is going to have lasting impressions on her as
Mm-hmm.
she's growing up into her adulthood. You know, take her on weekly dates, which I think this is so adorable. I think
I think so too.
Chick Fil A used to do that. They have like
They
daughter
did, yeah.
father daughter
Mm-hmm.
dates and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they would have everybody come out and like the little father daughter proms and whatever that weekly dates it is. Whatever, and that's tied into picking a project. That could be y'all date to do something together and go
Mm-hmm.
out and we used to go to my dad worked swing shift. My sister and I would go to the park and we go look at flowers and that would be part of our routine every
Mm-hmm.
week, you know. And don't think that you as a father offer less than the mother. That is not true. I think a lot of fathers that may end up being single fathers that have daughters, that is something that they fear that they're not going to be good enough because the mom is not there. And I don't think, don't think that is the case. You are equally impactful, if not more, on certain areas to your daughter's life. And talk, have conversations with her. Don't just be robotic and yes, no. Talk about life. Be straight with her. Be real with her. My dad definitely was told me how some men can be in not following rules on multiple levels,
Mm-hmm.
and take that for what you want, but just understand it's a way to help you nurture and school your daughter on how the people that she's going to come the men that she may come in contact with operate. so
Right.
so don't set her up, to
Right.
to be hurt.
Right.
So
So we've talked a lot about the father's impact on the daughter, and a lot of this is also from our experience with how we interacted with our fathers. But we do have to talk about the father's impact on the son. And even
mm,
though we're not men and we're only speaking from a purely research base,
right.
we still know, dealing with men in our lives, that there is an impact, a significant impact that fathers
Yes.
have on their sons and how they present themselves to the world and interact with other
Hmm.
people, right? So girls can regard their dads as their first role model for the opposite gender, while boys look to dads for how to behave. So the dad's impact can show up in their sons' lives in the following ways: their strength to face life, right? How are you showing up in adversity? Your son is
Hmm.
going to see that and emulate that, right?
Yep.
A dad is going to show his son the importance of family.
Mm.
If the father is not around and the son has a family, he ain't gonna be around. Why? Because my dad wasn't there. Well,
So why
and
should
we
I?
turned out all right.
Yep.
So why I need to be
You
there?
hear that all the time.
Right.
People
I
say that
turned
all
out
the
all right.
time.
No, you
Mm-hmm.
didn't. You think you did, but you didn't. Okay? I'm here to tell you, you didn't. So,
Because that should not be normalized. Just, okay,
no,
I'm good. But it's a coping
no.
mechanism.
So, and family is important. That unit is important.
Yes.
How to, woo, I might have to say this 4 times. How to respect the women in his life. How to
Woo!
respect the women.
One more time. One more time. One more
How?
time.
How to respect the women in his life. And I'm talking about how he respects his mother, his sister, his wife, girlfriend, or significant other, his
the random
coworkers.
person walking down the street.
Okay? If the father is disrespectful to the women in his life,
trust,
the son may follow.
Yes. Not always.
Not always. Now, there are some sons that see the way their father treats their mother and is like, you piece of shit.
Yes.
I don't want to have anything to do with it. And I have a theory. I'm going to give you my theory real quick. And it's a little off, but I think it's on point. Denzel Washington, he has kids. He's married to, his wife is beautiful, Pauletta. And I remember when John David Washington, which is his son, who's in acting now, been in the Malcolm and Marie, that crazy, what's that man's name? Tenet.
Ballers.
Yeah. So Ballers. When people like, well, how does it feel to be Denzel Washington's son? He always like, you mean, how does it feel to be Pauletta, da, 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 and talks about his mama's accomplishments. And I have a sneaking suspicion that he probably growing up didn't have the best relationship with his father and didn't like the way that his father treated his mother or the way his mother was treated in their relationship. And now that he is able to have a real voice, speaks up on it. Because I did see this video that his mom posted about how her and Denzel went to see John David Washington at his football game. I think he played for Morehouse. Or maybe it was when he was playing in the pros. And she was screaming and hollering. She was cheering for her son. And she said, and Denzel turned to me and told me, would you shut up? Would you shut up? And she's like, I know this man didn't just tell me to shut up. And they were laughing. But when you listen to that, it's probably a small piece of how he talks to her and treats her. And this is purely speculation, okay? I like to go down the rabbit hole sometimes.
Right.
But I feel as though, and then even listening to Denzel talk about his relationship with his son, I remember watching, there was this new movie, All the Little Things or something, with him and Jared Leto and Rami.
Oh, yeah, I saw that. I heard it.
And the interviewer said, oh, your son said this. And then they played this clip back about something really good that his son said about him. And it was just like, y'all need to, my dad is the GOAT, and y'all need to give him his flowers now. Da 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 da. And so they go back to Denzel, and Denzel's like, my son said that? And he's like, yeah. He started to choke up. And he's like, I didn't know it. I didn't know it. He's like, well, check out his sister. He like moved the conversation. She's doing big things and she's producing that. And he just like completely switched topics. And I was like, that is really odd. So I have a feeling that they did not have a very good relationship. And I think he may be the oldest. So there's probably a lot of contention there. His father probably was never there because he was always I mean, think about it. When that boy grew up, his father
Denzel was
at the pinnacle of his career, right?
Yes.
He was building his career. He became the $20 million man, right? Which is hard to do in Hollywood, especially as a black person.
As a black man.
So he hit that $20 million crew. And once you hit that, you can take whatever role you want. But you got to build to get there. This man's getting Oscars, okay?
Yes.
So you see that, and you look at the dynamic, and I'm like, they probably had some contention. And he's probably a mama's boy. And he going to ride for his mama.
All day.
All day.
All
so
day.
I only say that to say it doesn't matter your EQ not ego. Why can't I pronounce shit? I'm intelligent, y'all. I need y'all to know this. I got 2 degrees.
She is.
But
you just a little tongue tied.
What the hell is it?
What?
Economic status.
Yes, economic, socioeconomic status.
That's what I was trying to say. Doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, your background. It doesn't matter. Everybody has challenging, is going to have
Yes,
challenging relationships with a parent or parents.
it's
Okay.
inevitable.
It's inevitable. So even in that situation where I was talking about Denzel, he was trying so hard not to express vulnerability,
Yeah,
you know?
that is true.
And
He didn't
a
know what
lot
to
of
do with that.
he didn't know. And a lot of times when men don't want to show vulnerability, what happens? They show toxic masculinity.
Mm,
The opposite of vulnerability is toxic masculinity.
yes,
I'm just
hyper
telling y'all.
machismo
Yes.
role.
Um and a father can show and have impacts on how a son controls their body, their strength, and their
Hmm.
emotions. And when I mean by emotions, we talk about don't show vulnerability. It's okay to show vulnerability, but they need to know how to control their anger, their
Yeah,
rage,
and their strength and
their
their
strength,
rage.
their bodies. They need to
That is
learn
true.
that, and they need to learn it early.
Mm,
You
yes,
see a lot of these men out here just popping off from 0 to 60, and you're like, what the
yes.
hell is wrong with you? He was never taught
Hmm. How
how
to
to
restrain.
control that. It's
Hmm.
like the Hulk, right?
Yes.
It's like the Hulk. So, we're talking again about how fathers have these impacts on their sons.
Hmm.
And again, we're speaking from a research perspective, but we've all encountered men who probably have exhibited
Mm.
some negative behaviors in these categories I just mentioned.
Yes, that would be affirmative in so many areas. And where do these, when you're not able to control these emotions, um, some of these behaviors can manifest in unhealthy ways from these unhealthy father son relationships. Some, unfortunately, there are situations where you have a particular type of father, like who's an addict, and they struggle with addiction. It could be alcohol, drugs, gambling, pornography, and so on and so forth. But the son is still watching you and watching how you actually
Mm,
interact with this and being addicted and a compulsion to do things that takes priority over them interacting with their sons. So it can cause sons to kind of want to be that much more vulnerable as they understand it to be. They can experience emotional instability and they have anxiety. They don't know how to deal with certain things. They can pop off, like Zarifa was saying earlier. It can scare them from opening up to people because they don't know who their dad is going to be on a particular day due to that particular addiction. So they
right,
can't present themselves in the truest fashion and they
right.
can't get close to people because they're like, I don't know who I'm going to be, who I'm going to interact today with and how they're going to receive me. And it can cause you not to be able to develop intimate relationships or even intimacy,
Mm,
because having intimacy, you can have intimacy for friendships and with romantic relationships. And if you have these barriers and you don't have the wherewithal because you weren't taught, and it's just it's concerning that you realize that these things aren't going to hinder you from establishing productive relationships with whomever you decide to be involved with. There's also the abusive dad. We talked about this earlier when we're looking at father daughter relationships. It can destroy men from the inside out, seeing the abuse and receiving the abuse, and trying to think that is this something that is supposed to be perpetuated, and if it manifests, is it because it can show up as being extremely strict, and it just it just causes them to be angry. It can be viewed as anger, and it looks like you can't have mistakes or flaws. So when if you have a mistake and you have an abusive father, something small can seem like the world is over, and your father comes for you. So anything that you do going forward, you may become a perfectionist because you don't want to have a mistake because you're afraid of a fallout. You can't commit to anything because it's along with the same situation we mentioned before. You really don't know who that person's going to be, so you're like, I'll just stay here on the sidelines and
mm-hmm.
just keep moving as much as I can. And then you also, like we mentioned before, you can sabotage relationships before they materialize into anything, because you just don't want to create you do want to create conflict sometimes, and you look for it, or you just kind of are passive and you just don't care if there's conflict.
Mm-hmm.
And both are not, the two extremes are not beneficial to you at all. And then like we mentioned before with the absentee dad, you get to the point, well, my dad wasn't here, I turned out fine, whatever. But it could also be that you're clingy and you get a girl, or a partner or male, and you just want to be with them all the time, borderline stalker type
Mm.
behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of times, historically, stalkers tend to be men, not women. Not that we don't have our stalker tendencies, but if if you're, Inspector Gadget, but men sometimes develop that they haven't been able to capture their strength, their anger, and they funnel it into stalking, clingy behavior with whomever they're with, and they want to make sure
Mm.
that they don't that person doesn't leave them. And then unfortunately, this can also turn into being abusive. All of these things can kind of be in the same vein or
Mm-hmm.
going on all at the same time. And then you bounce from person to person. You're afraid and you'll be rejected. Or, with some men, you end up kind of becoming hoish behavior, which is acceptable. Because men are oftentimes taught, well, you go out there, you get some chicks, and the commitment thing isn't there. So you kind of embrace that and just run with it as much as you can. And then you're codependent and you treat women in a particular way that's not favorable or respectful based on how you've seen your father treat other women in your life. And it can perpetuate in so many different ways. Your kids are watching you, your sons are watching you, your daughters are watching you. So just be mindful how you are presenting yourself when in these relationships that unfortunately can kind of cause a cycle and whatnot. So then let's see. What's the last one that we're looking at here? The passive dad. That's for some folks, they think this is great because the dad is present and in the
But he
family,
just
and
ain't
he's
doing shit.
right. He don't do it. He's just there, but he's not there. He's emotionally distant. He doesn't interact with the family, because you can see folks, if the man is there to be with the family, they may think that's enough.
Mm-hmm.
And they're just kind of a bump on the log.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, yeah, and it doesn't add value to the children's life. They don't show helping the mother to raise the children. They're not an active member of the family unit. And it's not possible to bond because there's a no emotional tie. They're really just a piece of furniture in the house. And there's no way to build a relationship with that. So what does that leave us now? You have to look at how do you have a healthy relationship with your father and son.
Yes, and it is easy. It's easy to decide what type of relationship you want to have with your child. The hard part is actually following through.
Mm,
So, how are you going to have, what do healthy father son relationships look like? You got to be there for him. And when I mean be there for him, again, not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, you have to be there. Okay. You have to find common ground, whatever that is. And that's hard for some fathers. If
mm.
your son, fathers want their sons to be sometimes direct, like representations of them.
A mini me.
But you have to let that go because you can be a manly man and you can have a son who is not.
Mm-hmm.
Or what if you
Mm.
have a son who is gay
Yep. How do
or
you handle that?
decides how do you still have to find common ground. You have to be there for him. You still have to
Mm-hmm.
show up
Up. Mm.
and understand that your children are extensions of you, but they are not mini yous.
Mm.
They may have
That's
some of your
mm.
personality. He may have some of your personality, some of your quirks, but he's not you. He's
Yep.
him. And you have to let him be him.
Yeah.
Participate in father son activities. And what that means is let your son tell you what he's interested in
Mm.
and participate in some of those things. And then maybe say, okay, let's participate in some of the things I like. Maybe your son isn't into sports. He's just
Yep.
into art.
Or he's into computers.
Right. Or he's into comics.
Mm-hmm.
Find something that you can do together and participate in those father son activities and let the stereotype and the what you thought it would look like go.
Mm.
because that's going to interfere with you actually being able to have a bond with your son. Listen to each other. Again, I like how people I don't subscribe to the children should be seen and not heard. I think that's a toxic way to think. Because your children should have, how are they going to ever be able to fully express themselves when they get older and in the real world if every time they're trying to express how they feel you're telling them to be quiet, don't interject,
Mm-hmm.
your opinion doesn't, that's what you're telling them, their opinion doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Let them talk, listen, because you cannot tell your child, I don't want you to do X, Y, and Z, and then when they have a problem or when something bad happens, you're like, why didn't you tell
Mm-hmm.
me? Because you've never created a safe environment or a safe space for them to do that in. So
Yeah.
listen to, especially fathers and sons, you need to listen because your son is
Yes.
going through some things and you as a black man know. So listen
Yes.
to it, right? Don't hesitate to have the talk. And let's have the talk. Let's use the appropriate terms for the appropriate body parts and let your son understand what is what. Because
And
y'all
what
had some of y'all
happens?
sons out here just
Ooh, they don't know.
and understand no is no.
Yes, please teach that. Please.
Understand that
And it's a complete sentence.
consent is necessary.
Yes.
Consent for everything. Don't just walk up on somebody and hug them.
Mm-hmm.
Don't just, because people don't, you have to understand, people have boundary spaces. Consent is important. We need to teach that. That talk needs to happen even at a young age.
So true.
Okay?
So true. Mm.
Share your experiences with your son. A lot of times men don't want to do that, but you have to. If you were for the streets, tell your son you was for the streets. And tell him being for
Yes.
the streets didn't do anything
Work out.
for him. Tell him that being in the streets led to him and his mom not being together.
Exactly. He belongs to the
Seriously.
streets. Belonging to the streets has its repercussions and
Seriously.
consequences.
Whatever your failures were, whatever they are, share that with your son so that he can understand, oh, my dad did this and he overcame it. So if something
Right.
like that happened to me, I can do it. Don't be
Right.
shameful about what happened in your past.
Use it as a teaching moment.
Because shame, we're going to have a topic on that. Shame is a destroyer.
Powerful
Okay?
destroyer.
And celebrate accomplishments. Oh, yes. Shame. Y'all remember in
Shame.
Game of
Shame.
Thrones?
Game of Thrones.
Shame.
Shame.
Shame. Shame. Shame.
It's
Celebrate
funny.
accomplishments, okay?
Mm-hmm.
I know a lot of dads, let me not say that. I know some dads who did not show up for their sons because they accomplished something in an area that they just didn't deem was respectable, or
That's
they
sad.
didn't deem was manly enough, or just not something that I wanted for my son.
Mm-hmm. You can't get over yourself. Take yourself out that equation. It's about your son.
It's about your son.
Yeah.
And that has a negative impact. I'm telling you, I've seen it.
Yes.
This is
And
how you get the men that are just like, they want you, any slight they feel, they're very sensitive about it. Because
their
they're
ego
like,
gets bruised. The ego is easily
bruised. And that is a direct reflection probably to the relationship with their father. The ego gets huge, like, oh, I did this and you didn't even say it was a good thing. I'm sorry.
Right? Or it could be you're overly confident, you become arrogant.
Right.
And pompous ass.
Right.
So
I'm sorry. Like, that's shit you need to work out in therapy. Like, that ain't shit to do with me. I was happy for you. What you want me to do? Cartwheels? I mean, what you want? But that's because you were lacking that in your parental relationships, and now you want the person in your life to do that. Your intimate partner, baby. I'm your woman. I'm your partner in life.
Cheerleader.
I ain't your mama. I ain't your daddy. So don't project that shit on me.
I ain't here to
figure that shit out with them. And that goes for everybody. Stop projecting your mommy and daddy issues on your partners.
Hello.
Figure that shit out in therapy, right?
Yes, please go to
So,
therapy.
I just want to say, we're approaching Father's Day, and fathers don't get enough credit, like we said. And, especially black fathers. But,
Mm,
we love y'all.
you
We
do.
want y'all to be out here raising healthy daughters
Hmm.
and sons. We hope that you've gotten some good, information on how to move forward. And if you've identified some blind spots in your relationships with your children,
Mm.
that you take a step back, look at it, and see where you can do better. Okay? So we're going to take a quick break and come back with our last sip of the day. And we are back. This is the last sip of tea with your hood Dalai Lama. Today's quote is a good one, I think. My father didn't tell me how to live. He lived and let me watch him do it. And that is attributed to Clarence Cleveland. A father's impact on a child is unmatched. An active dad can increase emotional intelligence, boost confidence, and provide a different perspective on life. Presence is important because a child will one day follow by example and not by advice. Hello, good morning. Okay?
Hello.
Example is going to be a point where what you say is no longer going to matter, and they're going to watch what you do.
Mm.
And are they going to be watching a healthy, strong father raise his family, treat his mama right, treat the people in his life right? Or are they going to watch someone who is abusive and absent and unemotional? Which one do you want to be? That's all I got to say.
Well said. That's all need to be said. That's a word. That's a word right there. So thank you for joining us this week on Sip and Tea with Nat and Z. As you know, you can follow us on IG at sipandtea_Nat and Z_pod, and on Facebook at Sip and Tea, Nat and Z, to get information on upcoming podcasts, guests, and news. Thank you, as always, for listening. See you next week, where we will discuss all things pop culture. Thanks,
Happy
y'all. Have a good
Father's
week.
Day!
Yes! Happy Father's Day. Go and get him a gift now.
And more than the big piece of chicken.
Or a tie. Or a remote control. Get you know them fathers be loving all them remotes and stuff. Don't do it. Get him something else. Be creative. Enjoy, y'all.
Bye.